Okay, it's time now to take a look at what's grabbing headlines in the papers. We have Solange Moujon with us in studio. Solange, we're going to start there with a sad story, the death of 2 French soldiers in Mali.
Yeah, it's relatively tragic news. On the cover of West France this morning, you can see that cover coming up soon. It says basically that 2 soldiers were killed. They were part of the Opération, as you can see there. They were part of Opération Barkhane, excuse me. And it's the French military mission in the Sahel. They were doing a patrol along the border with Niger in Mali, and an IED, or an improvised explosive device, exploded and went off beneath their armored vehicle, killing them and injuring another. Now, the French version of the Huffington Post explains more about these IEDs, and they say that they are basically the bane of soldiers' existence in Mali, and that they're relatively common, and that jihadists are actually right now upping the ante and making them more difficult to detect. Since 2000, so they're more sophisticated, harder to detect, more threatening. Since 2015, the French army has confiscated some 25 of them and detonated over 210 IEDs. But finding them is difficult. They can be sort of lurking anywhere.
Absolutely. And that's something the Le Figaro newspaper picks up about, saying that fear of these unexploded devices.
Yeah, Le Figaro explains not just about sort of the physical damage that these bombs can create, but also the psychological wounds, they call them wounds, that they create, and that be it the fear that they go off, be it that they can be anywhere, so it creates paranoia, or even witnessing a fellow soldier be maimed or killed. Now, Le Figaro says that these IEDs reap extensive mental damage, post-traumatic stress, the trauma, as well as the trauma of having to kill people and being killed. The French force now, so this is part of their day-to-day lives. Now, the French force that's currently in Mali, Opération Barkhane, is eventually going to be shifted over to another group. Another operation, another military operation made up of soldiers from 5 countries: Mali, Mauritania, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Chad. Now, tomorrow, they, as the Figaro explains, these countries' leaders will be in Brussels with Emmanuel Macron to discuss how to finance this new military force. It will have 5,000 soldiers, and it's expected to have a budget of 600 million euros a year. Now, that represents over 20% of Mali's current national budget. So that's a lot of money that they're going to have to find those African Sahel nations and other benefactor countries.
Indeed, it's already quite an international force there in Mali for the last number of years. But let's turn our attention now to Syria. I can see that's taken on the front page of the Figaro. That absolute deluge of air raids on eastern Ghouta, described by the UN as hell on earth. That's to say the least.
It sure looks like it's hell on earth, as you can see here. I'll be talking more about this in the International Press Review because it's all over the pages in the international press as well. Here, Le Figaro ran with the headline, "The West is powerless when faced with the Syria tragedy." And then also in their editorial below fold, they basically say that the US and the EU aren't putting their foot down. And that until they do that, Russia will continue. Russia's backing the regime, will basically continue to do whatever they want. And the Figaro says that it is Vladimir Putin who will have the last word in Syria. Now, in Aujourd'hui en France, the Parisien, France's foreign minister says that Russia has the means, at the UN vote that's coming later today, that Russia has the means to pressure Syria to stop the bloodshed, and that they should do that at the Security Council. But that may not happen. Now, Jean-Yves Le Drian says that everyone should take responsibility for the apocalyptic bombings that are going on, be it Russia for not putting a stop to it, or other countries, including France and the US, for not doing anything and making sure something changes.
Yeah, one wonders why the international community can't get it together that little bit stronger, but it's definitely a very complicated situation in Syria. Let's switch gears entirely now, Solange. The French press, I can see, is also covering a more local story about the Paris mayor and her vision of a Paris where bicycles and pedestrians, instead of cars, are dictating the rules of the road.
Yeah, it is a local story. It is a very Parisian story, but it has made bigger implications because it's basically a battle of what tomorrow's cities will look like. Will there be more cars? Will there be more pedestrians? Will we be on bikes? How are we going to live with this pollution that is over our heads? Well, Le Parisien says, rien ne va plus. for the mayor of Paris. That means basically nothing's working or everything's going wrong for the mayor of Paris. Why is that? Well, French courts have just struck down her move she basically opened the sides of the Seine River, the roads along the Seine River, to pedestrians, or parts of it.
Yeah, closing them to cars.
Closing them to cars, basically. This is part of her many moves to make Paris greener. And a French court has just struck down that move. Now, the Paris mayor has said that she's already appealed the decision, so the cars won't be coming again right away. But it's bad news for her and her movement to sort of encourage pedestrians and bicyclists.
What do you think of the plan, Solange?
Personally, I'm a big bike rider, so...
I like it, but I have felt sorry for thinking about businessmen trying to come across the city in a taxi. It
needs to be
impossible.
completely rethought. The way the city works with cars and people and bicycles.
But I'd quite like a move towards that Dutch system of commuting everywhere on your bike. I'm all for that. Okay, we're going to have to leave it there, but thanks indeed for that wrap-up of the French papers. Time for us to take a very quick break now. We're back with all the latest updates in just a few minutes, so do stay with us.